Are you stuck in the back office, ready to move beyond spreadsheets and month-end closes? Let's change that. Today we are exploring business partnership, the stage where finance leaves the grind behind and becomes a strategic force. If you're a finance manager, director, or just fed up with being relegated to transactional tasks, stick around. This is your moment to build a team that will claim a leadership seat at the table. It's time to make finance the beating heart of your organization. Imagine your team driving cross-functional projects, influencing major decisions, and shaping a culture of progress. It's not just a dream, but necessity nowadays. Once the foundations and basics are solid, business partnership is your next level. You will shift from purely reactive tasks to proactive leadership, championing advanced analytics, risk management, and integrated planning. But before that, give me a moment to quickly refresh the foundations and the basic levels. Foundations are your bedrocks: people, capabilities, systems, and compliance. We explore them in separate videos, and you should think of them as the oxygen that keeps your entire operation alive. No matter which level you focus on, you will need strong foundations to maintain the stability. And it all starts with people and culture. I strongly believe that no matter at which level of maturity you are, you will face a certain level of challenge here. Therefore, it is very likely that you will want to work concurrently on foundations and the primary level of maturity at which you are. At the basics level, we explored securing operational excellence. You would hear me referring to it as a cave level, because you are stuck grinding and spending countless hours on reconciliations and copying and pasting numbers. We spoke about controls, data and reporting, and finally routines and processes. If your fundamentals are shaky, higher level of strategic goals will collapse. It is critical to tighten those basics first. You can ask me why. Because you and your team will always be dragged back into Excel and number crunching if you don't have this level well established. You will never be able to trust your numbers, and above all, the rest of the organization might start to doubt the quality of the function if you don't ensure the quality here. And trust is the prerequisite of any partnership with business, and that's the core of today's video. Now we are talking about getting out of that cave. Sticking to this analogy, your people start opening up and reaching to other teams, forming groups and creating synergies with those other teams. But before talking about the core, we have risk management. Being proactive about identifying, measuring, and mitigating uncertainties so you're never caught off guard. Then we move to leadership and influence to ensure your insights resonate beyond spreadsheets. Your team starts to influence the rest of the organization, having a unique insight into what can drive the most value. It is strongly connected with the capability part of the foundation, and both will work in sync, so let me quickly remind you that part. We divided capabilities into mindset, performance management, and leadership fundamentals, and the latter is the most critical for leadership and influence. It is more strategic, and the key question here is, how are your leadership fundamentals? This applies to you especially if you have a layer of managers below you. Remember one very critical point about leadership. Your true impact and leadership are cascaded and amplified by the quality of the leadership below you. What do I mean? If you have a layer of managers, most likely you will not have enough contact with the day-to-day of everyone in the team. And it is exactly your leaders who will shape them. And that's exactly dependent on your ability to develop and grow it. Finally, we have decision enablement, which means using advanced analytics, scenario planning, and integrated forecasting to guide the entire company. So let's dive in and start with risk management. At this level, you don't just react to risk, you anticipate it. There are many risk management and control environment frameworks, but I'll simplify them into three components. First, risk assessment and measurement, then risk mitigation and monitoring, and finally, ESG and sustainability. The latter one might surprise you, but hold with me for a moment and I will explain a little bit more about my position on it. Let's start with risk assessment and measurement, which means identifying all the risks that your company is facing and creating a risk register. What is it? In a nutshell, it is a list of all the risks you face, often plotted on an impact and probability matrix. It is your strong synergy with the legal team as well, as you would notice that they have a good view of all potential legal and regulatory risks, but it cannot stop there. You definitely should include all operational, strategic, financial, and just general business-related risks. and then you measure their potential impact, ideally in a comparable way, which usually the easiest one is the monetary impact. Do not stop at the surface level. Here you would see people-related risks too, for example the turnover of your most critical staff in the organization. It is definitely worth spending a decent amount of time working with all other business areas to identify and measure the impact and the probability of those risks. And above all, assign functional ownerships. Remember, at the business partnership level, you partner, so you're not alone with it, but it's critical for you to build awareness of the importance of risk management, otherwise it could be just brushed off by the other teams. Then define mitigation and monitoring strategies. In your risk register, you would have gross and net level of risk in terms of probability and impact. What does that mean? Gross is the level of risk if you don't do anything, and net is the level of risk after any action that you take. These will include hedges, contingency funds, real-time visibility, training, standard operating procedures, and many more that you can define and monitor as you go. Of course, you will end up with an extensive list of risks. Don't be surprised to see hundreds of them there, depending on the complexity, of course, and the size of your business. It is important then for you to prioritize those risks. How? Using the matrix we spoke about earlier. The most common you would see is the 2-on-2 version, but sometimes you would also see 5-on-5, depending on the methodology you use. The idea is always the same though. Let me show you an example of a 2-on-2 matrix. Here you would plot all the risks that you identified, measured, and assigned one of the 4 strategies. So let me quickly refresh those. First, of course, we have high impact and high probability risks. These are what you would want to avoid at any cost. What are they, for example? Declining a high risk investment opportunity, choosing not to operate in a region with high political instability, cancelling a project with significant safety concerns. That all, of course, depends on the level of underlying risk appetite and the strategy in the organization that you would have defined at the very beginning, or what would be also the part of your corporate strategy. Having said that, even in the companies with the high risk tolerance or appetite, the strategy for these will be to completely eliminate them or just do not engage in this type of activity if possible, of course. Then we have high impact, low probability, where you will most likely want to combine transferring the risk, for example, to an insurer with some level of mitigation activities. What are the examples of this? Perfect ones are natural disasters, but you will see many more of them in your register. The way you will recognize them is very simple. You might have 100 problems in all areas of your business, but when risk materializes, you only have this one. So you definitely have to address it, and usually transferring it out is the best option. Then we have a high probability and low impact risks. Here you will want to actively work to reduce the risk's impact or its probability. What can it be? A lot of operational, people or currency risk will be present here. Things that are bound to happen, but there are lots of strategies that you can employ to reduce those risks. And finally, you have low impact and low probability. You should just accept those. In comparison with all the other ones that we discussed, these are the lower priority ones. So that's it when it comes to a quick risk management refresh. But I'll leave this part with one thought. Don't let it become a financial issue. We talk about partnership, and it's your ability to work with the other functions to effectively work out the ownership and the routines behind an effective monitoring and overarching risk management. Finally, to close the risk part, we have ESG and sustainability. Why is it here? First of all, let me start with the fact that I believe that over the next couple of years to a decade, this will move for sure to value creation of the business. However, at this stage, and for finance in particular, I treat it as a part of risk management given the increasing amount of regulations, supply chain pressures, and increased reporting requirements. Today's leadership demands that we consider social and environmental impact alongside profits, and that is being reflected more and more in the business reality. So you want to make sure that this is an integral part of your operations, and finance is well integrated into it too. Leadership and influence. The second area is the core I want to focus on. Have you ever wondered why some finance teams command respect while others just are sidelined? I break this area into stakeholder communication, collaboration and visibility, and finally cross-functional initiatives. It starts with stakeholders communication, translating complex numbers into stories that matter to non-finance folks and generally the communication skills of your team. Given the nature of the stereotypical finance function, here is where the majority of the challenges lie. So often, people working in finance overemphasize the importance of hard technical knowledge and don't put enough focus on the communication skills. Yet without it, it's almost impossible to build a partnership with non-financial functions. Let's face it, most of the areas and topics we deal with in finance are very technical and often difficult to understand for people who don't have a lot of exposure to it. The most critical questions here will be the following. Can your team simplify and communicate finance in plain language? How do they handle the presentation and their ability to adjust it for various audiences? How is the feedback loop with other functions? Is it open enough? Can your team tell stories using the data that they analyze? All of these build the basis for an effective communication and are among the best ways to build trust. Second of all, build collaboration and visibility by driving cross-functional efforts. Don't just supply the numbers. Co-own goals with the other departments, making finance an equal partner, not just a cost center or a back office function. Show that finance can be a great partner in the delivery of the business goals. In the end, you have access to the most critical data and usually have a good overall view of the business. But it doesn't finish there. Does your team understand non-financial data? For example, operational, marketing or consumer metrics, and above all, how it all links and results in the financial performance. This is where your team gains great overarching connectivity to the business and how it all comes together. Without the right level of understanding here, it's difficult to challenge, but also it's very easy to blame other functions for driving the silo mentality. And finally, cross-functional initiatives is linked to the previous point, but it's more focused on the actual involvement of your team in the overall business project. Given the analytical capability of finance, they are usually a great partner in majority of the organizational projects, ranging from the commercial initiatives to operations and even HR. Align your finance function with the company's overarching strategy, so you are at the table from planning to execution. And above all, give your team exposure to the other functions so that they can learn and gain a bigger picture too. And you gain time for that if you address basics and foundations well. The final area is decision enablement. This is where finance goes from a data keeper to insight enabler. I divide it into advanced analytics and AI to predict trends and optimize decisions, then integrated planning for an end-to-end forecast that tie together sales, operations and finance, and finally continuous improvement, refining processes, benchmarking performance, and just iterating small pilot improvements. We spoke about analytics in the foundations and basics, and these are all strongly linked to one another, but here we are talking about more advanced areas. Everything you would have focused on in the foundations led to ensuring that your data quality is good and doesn't require manual interventions. That means having the right system architecture, smooth data connections, and the data governance. In the basics, we spoke about reporting and static visualization of data, giving everyone a good understanding of the organizational performance and its position. Here we talk about two things. First of all, predictive analytics. With the right understanding and integration of non-financial metrics, ensure good quality of the data. Here you can start building predictive models and engaging with AI. It is so critical though that you have taken care of the foundations and basics. Otherwise, trying it might be comparable to trying to run before you can even stand up and walk. If you did though, congratulations, it is really fulfilling area that can elevate the quality of the business partnership of your function and gain a much more sophisticated view of the business. Finance can guide the entire company to operate smarter, faster and more proactively. Integrated planning is the next one. We spoke about the routines and processes at the basic level. Here we are pulling them together more and integrating the whole value chain of your organization, or even going beyond and involving some of your suppliers or customers. Here is really all about driver-based end-to-end forecasting with the right level of automation and the involvement of all the functions, with finance at the heart of it. It is closely linked with the analytics as well, so you'll be able to expand the forecast much more into the future when it's much easier to base it on the historical performance and the learnings that you can gain and program into the algorithms preparing the basics of planning. And that helps you not to spend a tremendous amount of time on the actual data work, but more on working with other functions to overlay the unique insights that they would have coming from their respective areas. It also places the right level of ownership on the other functions, without forecasts being seen as the finance numbers. It is the business number. And finally, last but definitely not the least, continuous improvement. Very closely linked to the processes and capabilities we spoke about in the foundations and basics, but much more focused on the mindset here. The concept of incremental changes, Kaizen, and benchmarking helps you put the right level of pressure on continuous improvement, but also challenges your team to think a little bit differently. It is much more agile and focused on testing and improving step by step, as opposed to working on the massive projects. It does build a good level of discipline and learning, as you should incorporate it into your processes, the focus on the actions that will drive the actual improvement, be it for the results of the business, but also for the efficiency and the quality of the work. Hey, if you resonate with the way I look at finance and want to receive more regular guidance and tips, don't forget to subscribe to the Phoenix channel. Yes, we are focused on personal development, and I strongly believe that to be a great leader, you need to ensure your development as well. On top of that, I'll be releasing more strategies on how to elevate each component of this framework. So stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you in the main video. So how you bring business partnership to life? First, shift your mindset. Encourage your team to step out from behind the scenes. Forget about the financial certifications. Communicate, collaborate, and co-own results with other functions. Emphasize the unique position of finance to drive those products and the importance of leadership and communication in doing so. Give your team the opportunity to get involved in those projects, and you will end up with a well-rounded, business-aware team. Adopt advanced analytics. Start small, scenario planning or integrated rolling forecasts. Train your people to use machine learning and AI tools for data-driven decisions and start working on their adoption. It is often much more time-consuming for the organization to adopt more advanced tools, given the necessity to train and incorporate them into day-to-day operations, but also basic humans' resistance to change. Catalyze continuous improvement, initiate Kaizen cycles, collect feedback, run mini pilots, and keep optimizing the processes. It's perfect if you plan to roll out integrated planning or advanced analytics. You don't need to wait for that perfect product. Launch a good enough version and shift the mindset of your team to focus on continuous improvement. And don't forget about the right level of risk management. For many, the less exciting part of this level, but equally important. Ensure you have the risk management strategy, risk register, and processes to identify, measure, mitigate, and monitor the risks. When finance becomes a true business partner, the entire organization grows stronger. At this level, the rest of the organization starts looking up to you and the finance function to drive cross-functional projects and lead the organization. Finance is starting to become the heart of the organization, but that's not the end. No more cave life, only collaborative, proactive leadership. Thank you, and I'll see you in the pinnacle of this framework, value creation.